Here's some tips for getting started with Overture 5. After this video, you can consult some of the more detailed videos we have that go into many different aspects of the program. Three things to start out. Number one, connect up all your MIDI devices, your USB MIDI devices, before you bring up Overture 5, your keyboard controller, maybe a breath controller, whatever other input devices you plan on using with the program. Second thing is you want to know where your plugin libraries are. I assume that almost everyone's going to be using them, and so you'll tell Overture 5 how to get to them and load them all up. Then the last thing is just know what your audio interfaces are if you have more than one of them, because you're going to want to select the one that you want to use for the program. So now let's bring up the program. I assume you've installed it. We'll launch Overture 5. And the first thing that comes up is this new score panel that allows you to set up your score. If you don't want to see this every time, just uncheck this, open this dialog at startup option at the bottom left. They give you 4 basic template options here: basic, Garriton, general MIDI, and Vienna special edition. We'll choose general MIDI for now, and to simplify things, we'll click piano, and then there's all these different little piano options that they give you. It's nice they even give you an organ template. We'll select piano, and then you can put a title in if you like, and composer, a copyright notice, and you can change these later and say done. And there it comes up. If you want to, you can always click one of these titles you put in and even put a subtitle in if you want to change it. Put in a subtitle. You can change font sizes by just selecting something else there. Very simple. It handles text very well. So now we have basic template up that we can deal with. You can just click on a measure. You can see a little red line there. That'll show you what measure you're on, and it highlights it a little bit. Now let's make sure the program's set up the way we want for input. We'll go to Audio MIDI and go to Audio Settings and make sure you've set your audio device that you want to use. Then Audio MIDI, go to MIDI Settings, and whatever MIDI devices you input and whatever outputs you have should be enabled in yellow. If they're not enabled, click on one and hopefully it will be enabled. Again, make sure you connect these things before you bring up the program. That's my little MIDI keyboard that I'll use, so that's okay. Next thing, go to Options, MIDI, and make sure Keyboard Through is on if you're using a MIDI keyboard to input. The newer versions of the program are supposed to do this by default, but just in case, double check that, especially if you're playing on your keyboard and nothing is happening. Now, I assume you're going to want to use sample libraries with this. So the next thing we want to do is load our plugins. We'll go to Audio MIDI Plugin Manager, and I zeroed them all out, so there's nothing here. You have the option of loading VS2 plugins, and they give you your location. If you're on a Mac, this will show you your Mac plugin directory. VST plugins, and if it's not in the right directory where you want, you can double click on that and select what directory your plugins are in. So I'll just try and load my VST. I'll scan for them over here. And one of them I don't have a license installed on, so I won't worry about that. And it'll go in, try and load the others that I have. Okay, there we go. The scan's complete. And now when I come up, they're there. If you have some you know you don't want to use, you can, Guitar Rig 5, say, I can remove it, and you can clean them up better that way. So my plugins are all ready now when I want to use my libraries. Now, let's take a look at the general structure of the program. There are obviously menu drop-downs up top, and in Overture 5 there's normally 2 or 3 different ways you can do a lot of things. So the general file menu will allow you to open previous Overture 5 files that you've stored. It'll also allow you to import MIDI files that'll try and notate, and import music XML files. Uh, Edit menu that we can use for various cut and paste options and other things. Once you selected things, there's a score option that lets you do operations at the score level. Uh, a track menu option that lets you do operations at the track level, operations at the measure level, and operations at the note level. Then we have some general options that do various things. And audio MIDI we've seen, and the Windows panel has all the different layouts that you can choose to put the program into. Now, to show you some of the window options, the easiest thing I can do is, let me just open a file that I already have here and show you a few things. So here I have a file that I put in previously, or it could be one that you were working on. Now let's go through some of the options here. If I go and I take a look at the score options, if I click this open score view back and forth, you can see I can toggle between a DAW-like view and a score-like view. And that's just a wonderful thing, because that's one of the main things that this program can do for you that others can't. Allow you to work in both domains simultaneously. So you can see you have your piano roll. You can change velocities. You can go in and select velocity, some other controller you want to look at, like volume or any of the other controller options that you want. And then you can manipulate your piano roll, as well as going back, of course, to your main score view. You can also go into a view where there's a mixer underneath and the score up top. And a lot of these things you can also get into if you go to Windows. You can go into similar views like the linear view, which is nice. That puts the score up top and your piano roll underneath. So most of the time I'm working in this linear view because I want to see what's going on notation-wise versus what's going on in my score. Now, once I'm in linear view, I can go down here, this little pencil icon. I have 4 different options for drawing into my CC or velocity windows. Freeform lets me just kind of draw any shape I want, and the uh, values there will follow my shape. If you want, I can draw in a straight line, or I can draw in a parabola if I want to make the values move in that, or I can also randomize them. And so whatever swath I pick, the values will be randomized in that area that I've selected. Very easy and nice function that this allows me. Those are the basics in terms of the view. Now, if we notice, the uh, piano roll has different colors here. Each of the voices in the piano roll is notated in a different color. I can mimic that in the score if I want to see exactly what the voices are by selecting options, show, and then symbols and color. And now my score will map to the piano roll in terms of color. I can also go to the right side here up top and select different scaling, zoom in, zoom out, and most importantly, I can select individual voices, and that'll show me exactly what's going on in each voice, both in the piano roll and in the score. And this is also how I can set a voice for input to a particular voice, or copy voices between each other. I'll use my voice setting to do that. And then I can go back out here. If I want to go into the mixer view, I can do that from this panel as well. And I can go back to linear view and get myself back to score mode. And that shows you some of the basic things that you can do. Okay, let's try recording something now. We'll get out of this, file closed, get back to where we were. Now to record, I just want to click on whatever measure I want to record on. If you want to record on a specific voice, we'll select the voice I want to do here. Default, all voices here will default to voice number 1. And then I'll just click the record button. We'll get a measure of clicks, and we're off to the races. The only other thing you might want to do is select a notated quantization level. So here it'll quantize what's notated on the screen. at an eighth note, but the actual MIDI values that you're inputting will be retained. So let's give that a shot. So there you see, I recorded a voice, then I went to voice 2 and recorded again, and it recorded my second voice. I can go back and look at all my voices, and now I can see them all notated. It tried to put in rests where it thought I played them. If you don't like that, you can erase the notes. There's a little erase symbol here that you can always erase a note. Right? Oops. Put it on there. And you can go back to your note panel if you want to put in a note that you would have liked to. You can do that. Oops. What I did was I tried to put it in on voice 1, but that is on voice 2. So I need to go to voice 2 and then put that in, and now I'm okay. All right. And I can always escape out to get back to my normal input mode once I select some kind of an input, be it a note or an articulation or something like that. I'll always want to kind of escape out, or I'll keep on inputting the same thing on top when maybe I don't want to. So very simple way to input stuff, either alone with the keyboard or in combination if you want to add your own edits through the note panel. And then you can also uh, set up, if you're used to some other kind of a program, you can go and edit the key commands, and you'll bring up a very large window here of all the possible inputs that you can have, be they notes or rest or changing almost anything that you can change uh, in a notation program that you're used to, be it Sibelius or Notion or Finale. You can use those same kind of keystrokes by clicking on something and editing it to a value that you want. For example, let's go to notes. Here I used to use Notion, so instead of putting in a 1 for a note, what I did was I clicked on the value, and it allows you to put in, change this key mapping, and it allow you to put in, then you press whatever key you want, and it will uh, add that new keystroke to replace the default that was used for Overture 5. Now you can go and read the manual or go in here and see what all your default keystrokes are. But if you're used to using another program, one of the first things you want to do is go in and reset your key mappings. Now, the last thing that we'll discuss here is, what if I don't want to just use a general MIDI voice? I want to bring in one of my nice sampled plugins to play and use instead. So you can do that a couple ways. If you're doing it by track, you can uh, select the track inspector over here and then select your output device. You can do a similar thing if you click your library icon on the left and do very similar operations. So let's say I want to set this not to some general MIDI player, but I want to set it to one of my Omnisphere voices. When I go in, I can set to a MIDI device, an existing instrument. I have none since I haven't selected any yet, or one of my plugins, one of my software instruments. So I'll select for this Spectrasonics Omnisphere. Done, and that'll try and load. And when it's loaded, I can select my little eye inspector icon here, and that should bring up, once it's loaded, the Omnisphere setting, and I can go in there and select that, and now kind of, I don't know, whatever value I want, I can select one, and then when I go to play, that should be in the new voice. So there you go. We are now playing our plugin library. Now, let's end, since this has gone on long enough, by adding a few tracks. We can also delete tracks here with the track menu. So I'll insert a track, and I'm already on Omnisphere library. If I could select some other library if I wanted to use something else, but let's keep it on Omnisphere. If I go to existing instruments, this will track what all my plugins that I've assigned so I can easily select when I add new voices. So we'll select another track, and if I select keyboard, then it'll bring up another set of Omnisphere keyboard entries. If I wanted to, I can add another track, let's say brass. Now, this doesn't really matter what these values are because they're going to be mapping to whatever instrument you actually set for your library. But I don't know, let's just say we want to do that. And remember, if you want the names to be shown, you go here to the right side and click them off, show name or show abbreviation. Now, a few things about articulations and expressions. I can get to them over here per track. I can also do them globally over here through my articulations panel on the left side. And if I go to text and I go select expressions, I can get my expression list coming up over here. So let's just create an accent mark. I'll start by putting in a couple notes in my part. And if I go and select my articulation per track on the right side, you can see I can set, if I'm using some key switching, a value for the note on for that key switch, for that articulation. And also I can set a note off value because after the articulation is ended, I'll probably want to go back to some default sound. Now, when I take my articulation, and for articulations, you want to click the actual note to put them on, right? For expressions, they don't have to be on the note. They can be kind of just, if I wanted to say dulce, I can put them above the note. And expressions, you just want to see what that red line to the left is. Make sure that is before where you want that expression marking to come in on. All right, so I put like a global expression here. If I click that expression, I can set values to that, and that'll apply for any dulce I put in this score. Right? I can also set an expression as a user expression at the right here, and right click that and set, for example, my dulce there, and then I can set dulce up to be per track. I have up to 8 user expressions. This is a new feature in the latest version that I can set that way. But going back to my articulation, I set this articulation here. And if I click on it, you'll see it's set to the key switches that I set for that track. But if I go back and I select that same Mercado and I attach it to some other note in some other track, if you notice on the right side, the key switch hasn't been set to that one yet because these are assigned by track. So if I want to set that to some other key switch, say G3, and I go back and I select this guy, he'll be set to his key switch A2, and then this guy will be set to back to his key switch G3. And that's how you can set individual articulations and expressions up per track. And finally, let's just go to measures, because there's a lot of stuff here that you'll want to use to set your key signature. You can bring up a nice panel here, and it'll let you select whatever you want, and other options. You can say done, and you can change key signatures. Of course, you can select some other measure. Let's set key signature to something else there, and done. And there's a nice key signature switch. Go to measures, set time signature. You can click a measure, and here you can set whatever you want. Some default ones, if you want, say 5/4, or if you want, you can go in and even do sophisticated things like set time signature to a composite. We'll Make sure you always show it, and maybe we can want to do something like 3 plus 2 plus 3, and then the first one here will have the note value over 8, and let's do done there. And so that gives you a way to do composite meters very nicely and easily. Then of course you can set your tempo, go in and set your note value to whatever you want. You can click off whether you want it to be shown or not, whether you want a metronome to be shown with it in parentheses or not, and be done. And there you are. You can set that. You can move them. Very nice and intuitive. So that's about it. Enough said. I think you know enough now to start inputting music and set yourself on the path to becoming an Overture 5 user. Good luck.